What's up, everyone? Welcome back to a History of Basketball and 15 Sneakers podcast here on Grind City Media. We are live in the Built for Tough studio here in Memphis, Tennessee. I'm Lang Whitaker. That's Russ Bankston. Russ wrote a book, A History of Basketball and 15 Sneakers from Workman Publishing. It's out now as you listen to this. And we are working our way through this book, trying to learn about sneakers and history and basketball and all that stuff. Well, Russ knows it because he wrote the thing. But this is chapter 3 for us, podcast-wise, and it's about the Adidas Superstar. I will hold up a picture here from the book. There's the Adidas Superstar.
One of the very old ones.
Yeah. And these came around in the late 60s?
Mid-60s. 65 was when they first started it. Although, we're both right.
Yeah.
Superstar itself was 69.
Yeah.
It came from a shoe they called the Super Grip.
Yeah.
That came out in 65.
Which was, and you talk in this book a lot, like, you know, the previous podcast, which I'm sure you listened to, we talked about the Converse All-Star, the Chuck Taylor, and how everyone was wearing that for the first 30, 40 years of basketball. And this kind of came along, Adidas came along and sort of gave people an option, I guess.
Yeah, it gave people an option. And you know, I think Chris Severn, who's the main guy I talked to for this chapter, who was one of the guys who was instrumental in the design of the Superstar and the Pro model, which was the high top version, he was just so convinced it was a better shoe. And
then the Converse All-Star?
Then the All-Star. I mean, Adidas was in the business of making leather shoes at that point, of leather training shoes. And
for track mostly?
Well, track spikes, but also all those all-around shoes. And whether it's stuff you see now, whether it's the Gazelle or the
Samba, but those are like soccer.
The Samba, but they were like soccer training, you know? So they were doing leather shoes, and leather worked out better. You know, he initially called it the Super Grip because Chris played at like a lower level, like high school ball and a little bit after. And the traction of the Chuck Taylor just didn't work for him. Yeah. So his whole thing was to like, how do we have this shoe have better traction? And that's where they came up with the herringbone outsole.
Yeah, which is, you know, like you talk to some of the Nike designers today who talk about like that's like so genius. That's like one of the most important innovations in sneakers.
And the thing is, like, a lot of brands have done takes on the herringbone, you know, whether it be more of a wavy,
which is basically just like diagonal lines back and forth.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, to give you like all directional traction. I remember like one shoe, it might have been a Kobe shoe that they did one where like, or a Wade shoe, I forget what it was, but the tread pattern was an EKG. So it's just figuring out like, how do you personalize herringbone?
Was one of them a heart doctor? Like, why would they?
I guess they like,
dude,
what
EKG.
What's jagged like this? But yeah, the whole idea was just to have like traction in multiple directions.
Yeah.
And you know, initially, like, my idea was to do the Superstar and Pro model together because I couldn't separate the two. And one of the more interesting things to me that came out of talking to Chris for this book was like, no, the Superstar was the shoe.
Yeah.
Or the Super Grip was the shoe.
Yeah.
They knew they wanted to do a low cut. They knew a low cut would work.
Leather.
Yeah, but the only reason they did the Pro model was they realized like basketball players who'd gotten used to wearing high top or mid cut or whatever they want to call them, Chuck Taylors, wouldn't necessarily want to move to a low top.
Yeah.
So they wanted to have a high top for those people, which is why they did the Pro model.
Yeah.
But the Pro model was kind of a secondary
to the
Superstar.
Yeah. You talking here about like in the 60s. So I don't know how many people know the story of Adidas, but Adi Dassler was the founder, and his first name's ADI and his last name's DAS, and Adidas comes from that.
Right.
But his brother started Puma.
Rudy.
Yeah. So they were kind of competing with each other at the time, I guess. And but then Adi Dassler's son, Horst, shout out Horst.
Great name.
Horst came along and fell in love with basketball, sort of.
Yeah, and I mean, he saw it at the 1960 Olympics. You know, unfortunately, Horst passed away in the late 80s. He was 50-something years old, like super young. And Adidas, I think, kind of lost its way at that point, like without his leadership. But yeah, I mean, it was also a case, and again, like Chris Severn was my source for a lot of this. You know how Adi was put in charge of an Adidas factory in France, which was a couple hours away from Herzog in Germany, where Adidas is and where his parents were. So he was able to kind of work in these like sort of, you call it like almost a skunk works like project to do a basketball shoe where his parents wouldn't know about it. And working with Chris, who was sort of his connection to the basketball world. You know, and again, and then it was a case of like, how do we get players to wear it?
Yeah, well, that's a whole another thing. Once you get the shoe designed, then you got to like figure out how to get people.
And the thing is, again, like, you know, during that time before basketball shoes really became more of a status symbol, it's like, if they work better for guys, guys are going to wear them. You know, and he was able to convince not only Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, who had seen them at UCLA, because John Wooden also, you know, although both John Wooden and Chuck Taylor were from Indiana. So he kind of didn't want to offend them.
John Wooden strikes me as the kind of dude who would probably find a pair of shoes and wear them the rest of his life.
Well, John Wooden, like, I mean, he talked about it with Chuck's, where it's like, he would use a razor blade and cut a seam out because it caused blisters. You know, Wooden told people at UCLA how to put their socks on.
Is that in his pyramid of success?
It might have been. Maybe it was like level 0. But how to like pull it onto the toe and like bring it up over your foot. Like I talked to Marcus Johnson for this book, who played at UCLA in the 70s, and he still remembered like how John Wooden told him to put his socks on. And the stuff stayed with guys.
Do you think like Kareem was like one of the driving forces behind people finally like switching over from Converse to this shoe?
I think that was a big part of it. I mean, I think there was also a degree of like Adidas was more expensive. And it was harder to find at first. Like, you know, it's not like there were sneaker stores yet. It's like Athlete's Foot and Foot Locker and all that stuff didn't even exist. So it's like, you know, it was through sporting goods stores. It was through distributors. Maybe even in some cases through teams, you know, like John Block of the
I saw that. Houston Rockets?
Denver Rockets.
San Diego Rockets.
Like,
why were they called the San Diego Rockets? I circled that in your book, and I was like, what rocket is in San Diego?
Well, they moved around in the beginning, but you know, getting this expansion team into those shoes, and John Block apparently had foot problems that magically cleared up, and you know, it was convincing other guys to do it. Oscar Robertson was an early adopter, like
Jerry West,
Kareem. So once you have those guys wearing it, you know, I remember like reading about like Joe Hammond, the Destroyer, playing at Rucker and playing in shell toes, and it's like that stuff would be very noticeable back then. You know, I mean, just imagine like, you're used to seeing basketball players just wear canvas. And you see a guy in not only leather shoes, but with that 3 stripes branding on it. Like, that's going to stand out. You know, people are going to wonder where it came from. I mean.
You mentioned the shell toe. Oh, you're going to lose one. You mentioned the shell toe, but like, I think so much of that is like, you know, people even today call them shell toes, and you see shoes with that thing, and it's still there.
Right. And I mean, it started like, you know, even going back to that photo in the first chapter, like maybe it's a little bit different, but it did start with like it didn't have the lines. Like it was a raw piece of rubber. And there was a period where like it rubbed on people's feet, so they went back to a suede toe. And then they had like a half shell. And it's like, if you read Bobbito's book, like Where'd You Get Those? Like it talks about like, if you were obsessively watching basketball, you would notice stuff like that. And like the half shell was never even made available to people. So you had to like know people. Or you had to go to, I mean, we remember Jerry Cosby, which was a sporting goods store that was in Madison Square Garden. They would like get shoes from pro players, and they would sell those. So maybe you would luck out and find them there. You know, like.
It also feels like Adidas was really West Coast at the time, because it was like, you know, UCLA had them, the San Diego Rockets. Like it felt like maybe if you were on the West Coast, you had a better chance of finding them. And I guess Converse sort of had the Northeast at the time locked down, because they were from wherever, Massachusetts.
Well, and like Clyde Frazier talked about it, and I don't know if he conflated two brands or if it was them too. Like because when Nike started out in the early 70s, they were obviously based in Portland.
Yeah.
So he talked about when the Knicks would play on a West Coast swing, that's when guys would get Adidas or guys would get Nikes, and Adidas also, I think, did more than just sneakers.
Yeah.
I think they were aware of that. Like Tommy Heinsohn talked about people carrying Adidas bags because they would give them bags and carry them through the airport. And people were like, what's Adidas?
Yeah. Branding.
And and tracksuits.
Viral branding before it existed.
Because they were doing like tracksuits for like soccer players and track athletes. So it's like, if you're a basketball player and you can get something like that too, why wouldn't you?
I also like that, since we're talking about sneakers and basketball history at the time, like the ABA kind of comes into this too, because Kareem was coming out of UCLA and the ABA thinks they have a shot at Kareem, and George Mikan really fumbled the bag.
He did. He did.
He was the ABA commissioner at the time or something, president, something.
And Kareem's people were very clear in Kareem about like, present your final offer and I'm going to make my decision. Like there's not going to be negotiating. And Mikan had like an extra, like $1 million check to give him. And he decided to hold it back for a second round, which
Didn't work.
guess is the way to do business, but not when there's not going to be a second round.
I mean, look, neither you or I are known for our business prowess. However, the fact that the ABA didn't last very long seems like maybe those dudes didn't know what they were doing business-wise.
You look at the ABA, like the only exit route for them was to merge.
Yeah.
And they ended up merging.
Yeah.
And, I think my favorite story of that is still the Spirits of St. Louis guys being like, no, we're not going to fold. We're going to fold the franchise, but you have to give us a percentage of the TV deal. And they ended up making billions of dollars
perpetuity.
off that.
Yeah,
they had no idea. They finally, I think, got
Adam
bought
Silver
out.
bought him out, I think.
Yeah. But, I think all else being equal, I think Kareem would have gone to play in the ABA for the New York team instead of going to Milwaukee.
Yeah.
If the money was there.
But the ABA ends up getting Dr. J, and it seems like the Adidas kind of really aligned itself with the ABA in those early years.
Yeah, I mean, they ended up doing the Americana, which was the official shoe of the ABA.
I got a picture. Of the,
which, they did a few different versions of it. They did highs, they did lows, they did, it was like mesh and Dr. J wore pro models for a while.
Which are the high top superstars.
Doc was clearly a high top guy. He wore high top Chucks. He wore his Converse were like wild high when he was in the NBA. But I think, part of that was like the ABA was a very visual league, despite the fact that
the red, white,
they didn't draw very much. They didn't have much of a TV deal.
In your book, you interviewed Rick Barry, and he described the ABA as so Mickey Mouse, you wouldn't believe it.
Rick Barry, Rick was the guy they got, though.
Yeah.
It's like the ABA wanted to poach stars from the NBA. They got Rick Barry early on. He was going to play for his dad, it wasn't his dad. It was his college coach, who then got fired the year Rick was hurt. So, it just, things went sideways with him a little bit in the ABA. But the ABA was already sideways itself. That being said, I think if you look at the NBA now, the NBA is as much an evolution of the ABA as it is an evolution of like Celtics era NBA. The 3-point shot. Even just like cheerleaders and
the lights and all that stuff.
Music. The showmanship is there. Tunnel fits. There's like photos of like Doc coming to games in like all white outfits with the fro and heels and whatever else. It's like that's all more from the ABA.
Yeah. And then eventually the ABA does merge with the NBA and bring some of that flair and style to the NBA. The one thing, as we wrap this up, the one thing that I think, you named your chapter in this book Tougher Than Leather. And the other thing that this shoe brings to mind for me is Run DMC.
Yeah.
And literally did a song called My Adidas. And, kind of helped cement I guess, in the culture at the time, the importance of these shoes.
Yeah, I mean, it got a second life, obviously.
Yeah.
And Run DMC and hip hop in general and Queens, I mean, it was all a huge part of it.
Yeah.
I tried to stick to like, I think early on I realized if I tried to tell every story connected to every shoe in this book, like it would quickly become very unwieldy. So I tried to stick to the basketball side.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that stuck out for me though is, Kareem wore the Superstar. Like, there were a few different Abdul-Jabbar models that they made over the years, but those were more of a marketing side of things where it's like, we have Kareem, like, we need to do a shoe with his name on it, with his face on it, on the tongue. But he wore the Superstar. Like, Kareem was a low-top guy, and he wore the Superstar through the end, basically. Like, there was a period where he wore LA Gear. Mm-hmm. But apparently he wore Superstars up to like 87. So it's like that was after my Adidas. That was after
way after.
Run DMC is wearing these with no laces. You know, like it was still a viable performance shoe on a guy who won Finals MVP when he was like 39 years old.
Yeah, and had that damn hook shot that nobody could stop. The sky hook, I know. All right, that wraps up chapter 3, the Adidas Superstar. We're going to get to chapter 4, which is going to kind of keep us in New York and take us through some of the Knicks and some of the fun in the 70s there. But he's Russ, I'm Lang. That's chapter 3 of our History of Basketball and 15 Sneakers podcast series from Grind City Media, and we'll be back soon with chapter 4.
If you're looking for even more sneaker culture content, check out The Sneak Fest Show with me, Kelsey Ray Johnson, Sherman, Adam, and Jerry, live every Tuesday at 2 p.m. on Grind City Media YouTube and the brand new Grind City Media app.